Okay, we're on.
Hey, gentlemen.
Hey,
Hey
East, how
there.
you doing?
Doing well.
Good.
It's great to be with you guys tonight.
Yeah, you too. You too. I really enjoyed, I told you this before, I really enjoyed being with you in North Carolina, seeing your place last week. It was really awesome. So it's,
Cool.
especially in COVID land, getting to connect a little bit was terrific.
Yeah. Well, you know how I like to go. I like to dive right in. So
Yes, you
you
do.
invited me to talk. What do you guys want to jump into tonight?
We're
What's the
going
topic?
right into the deep end, East. Men's pain with women, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's okay. I think we can all shake our head to that a little bit. And more specifically, like how we as men lose our healthy self in the presence of women. So I'm excited to have this conversation because I'm assuming who's with us right now are noble men who know the noble man experience, and so the topic really is, we know what the healthy self looks like. We know what being a noble man looks like. Why do we lose it so easily sometimes? And in the presence of women and in the presence of the shadow feminine. So that's the big topic, East.
Yeah. Well, what is, from your experience and from your observations, what do you see about men in our culture? What's the pain point?
Stephen?
Well, I think you need an S at the end of that question. Pain points. They are many, and I think they are very, very familiar for so many men. I'd say first and foremost, a sense of not being able to be fully authentic, uh, being themselves fully in the presence of women. So whether this is a partner or a family member or a colleague, a friend, really being fully and truthfully themselves, not holding back, not having to wonder if they're okay, wonder how they'll be received. Um, it can feel like a straitjacket, actually, to be constantly wondering and worrying if I can just be myself, right? So the freedom to take that off and to say, this is who I am, this is what I value, this is what's important to me, and to be able to stand in that in the presence of a woman, particularly your partner, but any woman. And because there are many reasons why that's so hard, but we wind up doing all sorts of things to mitigate that challenge and not fully meet it. And so, we have all of these different strategies, and often we just find ourselves being very frustrated and angry that we're not just doing that. We're not bringing ourselves fully to the moment. And partly it's because we feel like we're actually not being seen or acknowledged or appreciated, right? Even if I do that, how am I being met? And then there's also the fear of doing that. Will I be accepted? Will I be cast out? Will I be made wrong? And so part of the response is to avoid it, to not go there, to kind of resolve myself and resign to, okay, this is how it's gonna be, and that, maybe I'll be able to bring 60% of myself to my life with women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty lousy way to go through life as a man, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely resonate with some of those strategies. What's the damage that's done by doing those? I mean, what's the cost?
Well, I think the cost is numbing out. The cost is, I mean, I don't think I'm being overly dramatic. I'd say the cost is your life, in the sense of living a fully alive life, right? I mean, that's part of the cost. The cost is feeling small, and then the cyclical kind of thinking that goes around with that. I mean, this is one of the things I noticed for myself. I'm a thinking type, and the kind of blame game and the stories, as a friend of mine calls it, the mental gymnastics, and that can last for weeks or months or years. And so I think the cost is steep. And I think it cost us our peace, can cost us a loving relationship, and it cost us our power. I mean, I think if we, long enough, if we feel not able to be ourselves in the presence of women, well, what do? Either you have to avoid women. Well, I mean, why? That has its own cost. It's first of all impossible, but it has its own cost. And then you lose half. You lose half of the zest of life, whether that's a romantic relationship or your own family, the women in your family, or that sense of self. So, I mean, I think the cost is really high. And I think one other thing I'd say about the cost, I'm curious what Stephen or East, what you think the cost is too, is kind of yo-yoing back and forth between the nice guy and I'll just use my colorful language, just being an ass, being a nice guy and then just acting rageful. And oftentimes it's one of those, or sometimes we do both. And neither of those is kind of that spot in the middle where I really get to be myself. And I just thought of one other cost over the long term living like this. It's cost to our health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, and our physical health. So I don't know. What do y'all think? What's the cost? And I'm basically talking about the living in the shadow or living my survivor self in the face of women. Like, what is the cost of that to you?
Yeah. Well, if I were to say, I think one of the strategies I use a lot is fixing. Like I always try and fix things. And so it gets to a point where, it's like I'm taking on the burden, like it's my responsibility. And I want to take responsibility for the stuff that's mine, but it feels like I'm taking on the responsibility of the world in some of that.
Yeah. How about you, Stephen?
Yeah, that's a heavy burden. I'm reflecting on how I used to be in relation to women and my partner. And I would say perhaps the deepest cost for me was I abandoned myself, the sense that I've abandoned myself. And as I say that, there's an amazing amount of grief associated with that. If I'm abandoning myself, who will stand up for me? Who will, if I'm not doing it for myself? And it wasn't like I necessarily knew how to or was good at it, but there were moments when I just stopped trying, even though there was a part of me like, no, just keep going, figure it out, work it out, it'll come eventually, or some version of that.
Yeah.
But there were definitely lots of moments, little moments, throughout the day, so to speak, where I essentially was abandoning myself. And as I reflect on that now, it's painful and it's sad, and it is not a rich and full life. I didn't get to explore who I really was fully, and then know myself more deeply, and then bring that into the world, bring that into my relationship, bring that into my family, bring that to my friends even. Like a lot of that was curtailed, and I was a small percentage of my true self. And so a high cost.
High cost, yeah.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, to hear that some of my mentors and guides experience this too, and are very human in this is a bit relieving. What brings you to this work? What are you interested in?
I'll be happy to jump into that one, Lee.
Yeah, take it, please.
So that journey that I just spoke to a portion of has been very real, very present for me for most of my life, and as I've gotten older, it's actually become more of a focus of my life, to where I did what I needed to do and got the support that I needed, learned, stretched, stumbled, did all the things so that I wasn't abandoning myself, and that what that journey has been for me has been extraordinary. The payoff for me, the riches, if you will, for me, for myself in my life, are far more than I actually ever imagined. Like I would have these ideas like, well, if I could just be like this, then, I'll show up this way, and it'll mean that, and it'll be great. And, I had these ideas and visions. And it turns out that not abandoning myself, learning what I need to do to be authentic in the presence of women, especially when they're in their survivor self. It was like my vision was like a tenth of sort of the richness that has come to me. And as I spend so much time with men, and I see them in some version of a journey that I was on, and the pain that sort of is quietly endured internally by so many men, and what they're longing for but don't know how to get there. I'm just like, you know what? I can't stand that anymore. I can't stand feeling that pain and sensing that pain in these men. And I want to do something. I want to help. And so that's a big part of my motivation is to help men to fully know and discover and live who they are, and the gifts, because we men have so many gifts and riches that are cut off because of all of these things, our fears or whatever it is, and we're losing out so much. We're not, I'm getting a small portion from the men that I interact with because of all of these. I talk about straitjacket. It's kind of like that, and so that's a big part of my motivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we take the straitjacket off?
Can I jump in first?
Sure.
Well, this is great. I love the idea of that is the question, how to take the straitjacket off. What I love about this journey, and the reason I'm doing this, is because of my own personal pain. I mean, it's very crystal clear to me that my own childhood was a rough one, and my relationships with both my parents were challenging. And many, many, many years ago now, I did the New Warrior weekend. I did MKP, the NWTA. It's called the New Warrior Training Adventure. Really got to be a man among men. And about 2 years later, I did Noble Man. So I don't know if many of you know that, but that's how I came to Noble Man, by doing it many, many years ago. And the healing was so profound that I wanted to make this my life's work. And so I was doing men's facilitation, but the idea of doing men's facilitation with women and men facilitating women in this kind of fundamental complementarity, the way we can both wound and really love and support each other, is such a unique thing. I got so excited about it that I immediately thought, this is what I want to do. And of course, I had the advantage of working with Britta and falling in love with Britta and marrying Britta. So I got a bonus out of it, that I happened to be married to Britta. So to bring this right into the traction of that relationship. And, I appreciate East, you saying, your mentors and all that. And I'm glad that I'm a mentor for you. And our relationship, like every other, has taken lots of work. So I'm really grateful. I'm so grateful that we are both willing to stand in and look at our shadows, and that kind of takes me to and claim our healthy self and do the work, and I think that was your question, right? Like, how do we take the straitjacket off, right? Yeah. Well, that's the good news, is the straitjacket can be taken off. I mean, that's the awesome news. We don't have to live this way. And I don't know, Stephen, I'd love to hear what you think too, but I'd say a few of the things for me that make this really valuable is, well, we have to learn to strengthen the muscle of our healthy self. We have, especially in the face of women, that's a muscle and it needs to be strengthened. And it's kind of like at Noble Man, you get that, you get to curl you get to curl the 25 or 30 pound weights, and you get to, and you walk out like this, and it's awesome. But, over a long time, you want muscle that's sustainable, right? And what do we call that? When you're training for endurance, right? So you want to train for endurance, and not just to endure, but to thrive. And so I think for that, men need community. We need each other. We need a place where we can be real, where we can really speak the shit and our experience with total and complete honesty. And we need a place to do that where women are not. And I love women and I love the work we do with women. We need a place where women are not. There's a healing that comes with women. There's a healing that comes not being with women. So I think that, and I think accountability is a big part of it. Stephen, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just echo firstly, I'll simply echo your sort of overall statement of strengthening our healthy self. And when I think of that, East, what that means to me is it's not a theory, it's not a concept. When I say that, like my experience of it, like I've learned about the healthy self, right, through Nobleman and other core things, but what it has become is my daily life of, from moment to moment, when I'm feeling challenged, like looking inward, what's going on for me? What's that about for me? What am I afraid of? What am I angry about? What am I sad about? What's my need here? How is it not being met? What is it that I want? How do I communicate that? Right? It's like these are all multiple pieces of what it means to strengthen my healthy self. And it's an ongoing practice. And for me, it literally is a day-to-day how I live my life now. And it takes practice, and it takes, for me, I like to think of myself as having a pretty good mind. I'm also a thinking person, but sometimes I kind of think that I'm a little bit slow on the uptake on certain things. And for me, it's like repetition and guidance. Like the shifts that I've experienced in my life and how I've come to be where I am, find myself right now, came because I spent the last 6 years now persistently with mentors. For the last 6 years, I have had multiple mentors in multiple areas of my life, particularly when it comes to transformational growth and self-growth. I wasn't able to do this without that. Like I'm needing that kind of guidance, and because it's tricky work, this human condition and how we are, and it's like I'm so triggered when she does this. I get so angry. I just don't seem to be able to like get on top of it and figure out like what's going on here, and to pull that apart on my own, or with a couple of courses or whatever, it doesn't stick. And so for me, the way I made this shift and how I took off my own straitjacket and keep it off is that I stay connected with men in community. I still have mentors, still have coaches, and I also have a community of men who are also committed to this on an ongoing part of my life. Because when I slip and fall, they are there to remind me of what I'm up to.
Yeah. I just want to jump in there too, Stephen, say how important community is. And two other quick factors. I think one is to be able to contribute to other men too at the same time. So I do this journey for myself, but in our world right now, we're so focused, we can be so isolated. And COVID just adds to that, right? So we can be so isolated, and kind of me. And it's one of the challenges of kind of personal growth work is, what Britta calls staring at my belly button. And so there's forever, I'm kind of, what can I do to improve myself? And part of it is like, hey, there's East. He needs a hand. Let me support him. There's Stephen. He needs a hand. Let me support him. Like, here I am, brother. Like, your journey is my journey. And there's something, that's such a rich part of it. And the second thing I'd say is discipline. The discipline. We're also challenged, and we're in a chaotic society, if I can say that. And discipline's a challenge, I think, for all of us. And so all of those things are the reason that we created this Living Your Nobleman program, which is what is the culmination of years of thinking, what is the follow-up to Nobleman? What can we do that will follow up to Nobleman? Because there's so many men who've gone through and had this exciting experience of Nobleman, this profound, more than exciting, this profound experience of Nobleman. And they're like, well, how can I sustain this? And so that's what the Living Your Nobleman program is. It's 6 months dedicated to cultivating your healthy self, specifically in the presence of women. That's what it is. And I won't go into too many of the details, because we can put a link in here and guys can check that out and get all the, but basically it's 6 months of mentoring from Stephen and myself, going through the pillars of the heroic journey, which I'm sure appeals to you, East. I mean, I know you love story as much as I do, and Stephen loves it, and so we're going through that heroic journey in a 6-month period. Specifically, like, how do you claim your healthy self in the presence of women? That question. And so that's the hero's journey. one-on-one coaching, teaching calls, group coaching calls, daily support and accountability buddies. That's the program. And it's really all the things that we've been wanting to put together for so long. Stephen, what would you add?
Well, East, one of the things that Lee and I have been, I don't remember exactly how far back, Lee, but it's been a long time, many, many years. We've been talking sort of like in between processes at Nobleman, and like, this is awesome. What's next? What can we, it's like, what more can we do? What do men need? What do they want? What's not out there in the world? And core itself is quite unique, as you know. And so what from that core way of seeing the world can we bring forth? So we've been reflecting on this and conversing about it for years. And what it's interesting because what Lee and I have both sort of done on our own is we looked and said, well, if I was much earlier in my journey than where I am now, and before we had all the experiences and the mentoring and the programs and stuff that we've done, if we were like, further back, what is it that I needed and wanted that I didn't get?
Wow.
Because I tried a lot of different things and things were helpful in different ways, but it didn't really last. It didn't have the impact and this really full transformation that I was looking for. And so it was like, well, this is what I needed. This is what I wanted. And I didn't know it back then. That's part of the problem, is I didn't know that's actually what I needed and wanted. So I tried a lot of different things. Now in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, that's what I needed. That's what I wanted. That's what made the difference. And Lee and I both sort of came to that on our own, and then kind of came together and brought that and said, yeah, this is what, what we can offer these men, particularly because of the journeys we both have been on, decades, quite literally. And also the fact that we are both in, very healthy relationships with two really strong women. We are not in, I'll say we are not in quote unquote easy relationships. We are in real relationships. And
that's just between the three of us. Right? Just between the three of us. Britta will never see this.
Yeah, right. And it has demanded a lot of us from us.
Yeah.
Our own work, our relationship, to be able to stay with it and keep meeting it has really demanded a lot from each of us. And we just felt like we have a lot to offer men, generally speaking, and then in this specific area. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of how we
awesome.
came to it.
I really honor that you're answering the call. Like, the community has put it out there. I've been a part of those conversations of what's next and how to take it to the next level, and to see this evolution. And maybe if I just ask one more question, briefly, I'm curious, like, what's possible for us through this? What's possible for us individually, and what's possible for the community, the core community that we're developed and committed to?
Yeah, that is an awesome question, East. You asked that question in such a profound way. I even think beyond the core community, like what's possible when men do their work. I love to think big and global, but what's possible immediately is peace, healthier relationships, more peace at work. Well, that sense of self that Stephen was talking about, that sense of I am who I am. I love this idea. I know who I am. I know what I want. I know what I don't want. And that's a profound thing. That's what's possible. And that permeates family. So think about all the stuff that happens at Nobleman. Think about all the joy and the growth that men experience in the weeks after Nobleman. I mean, it makes them stronger husbands, stronger dads. I mean, we could just have a whole conversation on the impact of being a Nobleman in the presence of your children and of young people in general, like modeling that, living that. Stephen's a father. I'm not. I didn't have that particular journey, unfortunately, in this life. But Stephen, you know what it's like to be a dad and the impact that being a father is. And for me, I teach and I've taught a lot of young people in my life, and I have godchildren. And so, I mean, to come into a relationship where I feel empowered with the people in my life, just has such a profound impact in my marriage, in my work, and in the women I work with. And at CORE, I mean, I could just talk about how it ripples through at CORE itself, like just on the CORE team. So, I mean, we've all seen the nobleman transformation. The question is, we want to sustain it. We want to deepen it. We want to make it richer and strengthen the muscle so that it lasts. And I mean, we've seen that. I mean, I've seen that happen. And you talk about the CORE community, East. I think this kind of happens in some sense for guys like you who are the heart-centered, passionate, like I'm in it, your heart's in it. And the guys who stay in our community over months and sometimes years. And sometimes in that community, we get bits and pieces and we come back to Staff a Radiant Woman and we get some moments like this and we get to connect. The intention here is to take all that juice and put it in a form over 6 months and, make it clear and succinct. I mean, relatively, 6 months and disciplined and to like harness all that. So I think that would have a profound impact on the CORE community.
Very cool.
If I could just add something to that, I reflecting on the question and Lee, your response to it, and one of the things you said, Lee, that I'll also echo is part of what the impact is individually and communally is transformation that sticks. That's sort of been my challenge, as I shared earlier. Few steps forward, and then it kind of dissipates, and steps backwards, and then maybe another couple steps forward, and over time it kind of dissipates, and I find myself sort of like kind of doing the same thing all over again. I have a little bit of new skills, a little bit, whatever, but not really profoundly shifted what it is that I'm really needing and wanting to shift. So we're talking about what our commitment is profound shift, profound transformation that now becomes part of you, in a sense, let's just call it your new operating system, that it sticks, that it isn't something that fades, but becomes simply, part of your breathing. This is how I am now. This is how I operate in the world. This is how I show up in the world. That profoundly affects everything, like Lee was saying, like every area of your life, it is impacted by that. And communally, well, first of all, the men that will be doing this together will form a bond, doing that work together that is a type of brotherhood that is rich and deep and rare. But also how you then show up in your life in the world, whether it's in the CORE community and particularly in the CORE community, but elsewhere. When you are showing up in your life in this way, much more authentic, much more genuine, risky, vulnerable, real, it impacts everybody around you, right? Our healthy self calls forth the other's healthy self. The others can say, you know what, it's actually safe for me to be real right now and be vulnerable with you, right? And all of a sudden they share something that they were scared to share, say something they were scared to say. Right? Feel empowered and like, okay, this guy's not going to run away, or he's not going to ridicule me. In fact, he's going to champion me in my moment of wobbliness, whatever that might be, and actually support me. And how that then filters through all of the folks that you're interacting with, and in particular in the CORE community. I just had this idea of like, well, what if we were all facilitators? Like what if we were all at that point where we're just kind of like at the, our healthy self was a practice muscle that was strong, and we were kind of all facilitators. What would we look like? What would our life look like? What would our communities and interactions look like? I don't know the answer to that, but I love that question.
Yeah, and Steve, I just want to say, we get a glimpse of that in the men who show up at Noblemen, and on that Sunday afternoon, and on the circles that follow. And East, like you've been such a part of that. And I think of other men in the CORE, like I can think of 24 guys right now in the CORE community who've been such a part of that. Can you imagine like what that's like to live that together for 6 months, to take like that experience and say, we're going to, and I would say that's the last thing I want to say about the whole journey here is there's such a unique gift because everyone in this journey at Living Your Nobleman will speak the same language. They're not guys off the street who may have other good healing work, but they don't speak the core language. They haven't had the nobleman initiation, but everyone in this group will and does.
Mhm.
And that's a common language right off the bat. You're like, do I know what it's like to stand in the fire? Yes. Do I know what it's like to face my shadow? Yes. Do I know what it's like to let my anger rip and my fear? Yes. You know, all those things. Do I know what it's like to receive love from a woman? Oh, that was hard for me. That was easy for me. That filled me up. That I still remember that Friday night at Nobleman. Like all of you are going to have the same vernacular, you know, on the journey. And to me, that's so exciting.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
that's super
Yeah,
exciting. I just, it's evident why you guys are doing this work and your interest and hearts are in it. So I really appreciate that and appreciate the time to connect on this.
cool. Yeah, thank you, East. Thank you so much for taking the time too. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.
Take care, East.